Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Dead Space 2 Zealot difficulty, no upgrades, no damage, and no shop run. This is Chapter 2, and we're going to be moving out into some of the more commercialized areas of the sprawl, and here we have an encounter against... is that a female slasher, that one? I think it is. So, you'll notice that this one actually has like a top on, and you can see breasts. That signifies that this one is a little bit different to the other slashers. This one has the ability to fire a projectile at you, and I could have used it just then to save some ammunition. Because at range, if you come up against that particular necromorph, they will fire that projectile, and it's not as good as the one that the Puka does, but it's very useful. And once again, if you're wanting to play a little bit smarter than I am going to be in a majority of some of these videos, then that's the way you want to go forward. Additionally, you could just use stasis to keep it perma-stunned until you lose a limb, and then use the limb to kill it. Which, all of these are really, really good strategies, but once again, at this stage of the project, I was just trying to get back into the swing of things, and there's going to be a lot of wasteful moments with ammunition. Some of them are willfully though, like for instance, ignoring the Puka's vomit and shooting them is stupid. I don't know why I did that. Oh, additionally, I could be picking up the brooms, because the brooms are essentially javelins. They're just like the Slasher's arms and stuff, so I could be using that too. But with the Pact is slightly different. This is a standard Necro, as I take off his arm and then throw the box at him, and then I'm probably going to have trouble with the door here. The doors can be a really big pain in the dick in this game. Very frustrating. Is this where there's an infector through the bars on the right here? Yeah, I should have thrown something at the infector to stop it instantly. I think I just did. Yeah, there you go. So, those enemies, the infectors who create more necromorphs, their weak point is their tongue. The tongue that they embed into people is the area you want to shoot at, and you'll notice if you hit it with any kind of thrown item with your kinesis, it will kill it instantly. If you hit its body, it probably won't die, because they're pretty tanky. But if you hit it in the right place with the right thing, that's all you really need to do to them. But the thing is, when you fight the Pact, the kids, they die in one shot. And when you're on PC and you have mouse and keyboard ability, being able to aim really quickly and shoot the kids, it feels so satisfying, and it's really good practice. So I'm going to be using ammo on most of the children fights just because of that reason. You feel like Clint Eastwood as you shoot people. It's really cool. There is your first experience with the Leaper, which, that enemy there is the worst enemy in the game. If you don't count those stupid flipping turds that jump on you and shouldn't exist, that thing right there is the only enemy in this game that's going to cause you grief. Everything else is so immaculately balanced and immaculately fair that you'll have no problem with them. That piece of shit is so bullshit and broken, it's not even funny. And if he worked half as good as everything else, this run would be even more simple than it is. And of course, this is not a simple run. I'm going to make it look simple, but that does not mean it is simple, because it is a difficult thing to do this. So, I knew there was a Puka in here, so I brought my handy accessible wheelchair. I'm going to throw a wheelchair at this guy for the next 5 minutes to show you that the damage if you don't hit the limbs is quite nominal. But I should be just getting enough range for him to puke at me, catching his puke and killing him quickly. That being said, there are several instances of me doing this in this run because it saves ammunition and it's quite funny to do. There is almost a Laurel and Hardy level of comedy to throwing something at an enemy such as that. That's also a female necromorph, that one just there. So if it had not been running at me in that programmed scare moment, I could have used its projectile. But as you can see on the torso there, the cephalic area, you can see that it has breasts, so it's a female, that one. Getting to be able to spot the difference between male and female necromorphs is really useful. One thing I would like in this game that isn't the case is, it'd be cool if there were necromorphs who had spiky feet. Like, they actually had, you know, swords for their legs. Kind of like those prosthetics you can get for runners, only bladed and made from, you know, bone or necromorph juice or whatever. Because then, you could have 4 opportunities to steal weapons from each enemy. It'd just be nice if every so often there was a version of a necromorph that did have spiky feet. Maybe it led with its feet rather than its hands. Maybe something for that sequel we're never going to get. But this is an interesting fight because it seems like it's going to be really tricky because they're dropping all around you. But as long as you can control it and you can stop him, he's the only threat. Everybody else is actually pretty okay. And it's an interesting thing with this game. The AI is immaculate in a lot of ways. The way they've designed this game is so fair. This is a masterpiece, guys. It truly is. And I didn't realise just how kind and how good the game is for its rules until I did this run. Once again, the Leaper doesn't count. He breaks the rules all the times. But everybody else is really convenient. For instance, if you're stood next to a necromorph and they drop out of the ceiling, but you're out of its range where it attacks, it will creep slowly towards you to get into range to do its attack. It will move at the slowest possible pace to give you a chance if you're close to it. If you're at medium range, it can move at normal speed. If you're at long range, it can run at you. But if you're close enough, but not quite close, it'll just walk really slowly, giving you ultimate time to punish it. But if it gets close, its attacks have incredible tracking, and they're really fast, and they've got good range. So the rule of this game is, if you're close enough for them to start an attack, you will get hit. It's almost impossible to dodge. But if you don't let them get into the range where they do that, you can completely control them and maintain them. And another thing that this game utilises, which I don't think I realised when I first played it, is the camera. The necromorphs act differently depending on whether or not you're looking at them. The laws of quantum mechanics are applied to them. It's interesting. They're a bunch of Schrodinger's cats, it turns out, where just looking at them changes the state of their existence. So if you keep the camera off them, they will be quite dormant, quite passive, and they will not show you their full ferocity. But if you look at them, you give them the keys to the castle, and they will come at you. And you can manipulate the camera to make sure that they're not always completely lethal. And everybody's had that moment where a slasher sneaks up on them, and you see the actual blades of their arms behind you, and you panic, and you turn around and kill them, and you're like, oh my goodness, how did I not get killed? I don't think they can attack you. I think they have to be on camera to attack you. So when they sneak up on you like that, you're actually quite safe. And as crazy as this is to say, and you won't see many instances of this, but turning the camera away from a necromorph when they are not attacking and not running is a legit strategy for safety, because they can't do anything until they're on your camera. So if you get into a spot where you need to quickly reload, and you don't want them to start sprinting at you, turn around. It sounds crazy, but it does work. There's a lot of camera manipulation in this game, and it affects the mobility and the attacks of the enemies. And you'll notice it when you come up against the kids, because as long as you don't look at the kids, they cannot cut you off. They can't do their jumping, massive distance covering move. And it's really interesting how you can control them with the camera. And of course, this has been something that's been in games for a long time, but I just can't remember if I knew it was in this one. Oh, by the way as well, guys, I've adjusted the brightness as best as I can to make the game as visible as possible without completely ruining the horror vibe of it, and it still looks dark as fuck on these videos, so I am sorry about that, but it's a pretty dark game. There's not really too much that you can do about it. But in this room there is your first encounter with the exploding guys, who have the cyst on their arms. I don't really know what these guys are called, so I'll probably just call them exploders, because that's kind of what they do. And this is another instance of why mouse and keyboard is so powerful in these moments, because traditionally these enemies can be quite nerve-wracking. They sneak up on you and you can't quite hit them as accurately as you would like to, because you're using a controller and aim assist and everything. But with a mouse, you're a fucking laser, so you just wreck them. And if you do not know too much about this enemy, you can indeed sever his arm and keep the explosive, and then just body him with baggage, and then carry the arm with you to use it against something more dangerous. And this explosion here is so powerful, it can kill black necromorphs. And black necromorphs can take the flame canisters, you know, the red canisters that explode? They can take one of those, yet they cannot take one of the cysts, explosive arm things. So it's interesting to know that that explosive that they have is one of the strongest in the game. And I would wager that if you could carry this thing all the way to a brute, it would probably kill it, or at least delim it, so then you can finish it off. So never underestimate just how powerful that explosive is, but also never underestimate just how much range it has, because it's kind of stupid. But these are the rooms I'd never seen before until I played the PC version. And I know I've never seen this room before because I don't remember the blue pipes. And then I did a little bit of searching online, and it turns out I think it has something to do with the extraction. There was an Xbox Live game, I don't know the name of it, And I think if you bought that, you got access to those rooms. And I didn't buy that game because it was like fucking all stupid game, like mini games. You had to guide like some triangle through mazes and stuff. It looked dumb as shit. And I like Dead Space, but I don't like busy work, and that's what that shit was. But speaking of carrying this explosive, this next encounter is going to have an infector, and it's going to have a slasher coming through these train doors. And I'm going to shoot them with this, and it's going to kill them both instantly, and it's going to have absolutely no incident. I really like this room, but I always feel like it's going to be a bigger fight than it is. So I'm always kind of trepidatious when I come in here, because I have this built-in memory in my brain that I think this is going to be a scary fight, and it isn't. Because once you kill this guy, I think one more person pops up behind you. There we go, that fella. And that's it. And these are the weaker necromorphs, which means you can take them out very quickly. He does his little sidestep, what a beast. I don't know if that's programmed. One of the things I've noticed in this game is that enemies' behaviour changes depending on whether or not you're aiming at them. And I only noticed it when I was coming up against the Pact again. And I noticed that when I aimed at the Pact, depending on how I moved when I aimed at him, depended on what he did. And when I wasn't aiming at him, he didn't do the same thing. So you can manipulate the enemies in some pretty interesting ways. There's also a really cool manipulation of the stalkers later on. The first encounter with the stalker, every time you trip a threshold entering a room, it forces them all to reposition. And it gives me a little bit of an inkling into how they're designed. And I think the way that the stalkers are programmed is every time you cross a certain threshold, it forces them to make a decision. And their decision can be to attack you, but they can only attack you when they've telegraphed that they're going to do so. They have to do that. So when they stick their head out to tease you, to shoot at them, and then they pull it back in, that is what they have to do to start lunging at you. They can't just lunge. They have to at least telegraph it first, it seems. So, previously to that, they can make a choice to move, or they can make a choice to telegraph and then attack. And if you keep stepping on that boundary, they keep doing it. So you can use it to make them move between objects and just keep shooting at them, and it's free kills, which is really interesting, but not as useful as you'd think. And then we have this train sequence. So, something really cool to know about this train area, if you punch the rails, they will break and they'll become free javelins to use. So if you're expedient with this area, you don't have to fire your gun, you can just use these javelins. The problem that I had on this particular sequence is that when I was trying to grab them or to break them and make them viable, there were times when they would get stuck in the geometry and I'd get hit by a slasher. So I'm probably going to be using more of the organic blades than I am the metal ones, as one spawns behind you here. And then I try to break this, I'll try and find a weapon. There's a puker, throw the puke back, Chris, please throw the puke. For some reason I didn't want to do it at this point, I don't know why. I just was content to shoot them, and it's such a waste of ammunition. Luckily, so far, you haven't really seen too many silly uses of my ammo. I haven't missed too much. I haven't shot them, I haven't shot the heads off too much or accidentally hit the wrong layman things. This is another instance where I should just throw the puke back, but I don't. But it's if you don't have the capacity or the skill to throw the puke back, it could happen. I know it's easy to do, and you think it's easy too, but there may be somebody who just can't do the timing. This is a good strategy for them, I guess, using the rails on the train, and then moving forward. One of the two things I would really love to change in this game, if it ever gets a remaster, I would love to be able to open doors while you're holding stasis, and I would love to be able to sprint while I'm holding stasis. They're the two upgrades that I wish this game had. And I can't remember if you can do that in Dead Space 3, because I don't really remember Dead Space 3, considering it killed the franchise and is a terrible game. So it might be in there, but I don't know. But those are the two things I really missed, and especially in Zero G. There are a couple of moments in Zero G where you have to attach these thrusters to move things, and you're being shot at by these weird creatures that fire blobs. In those moments, if you could boost while grabbing those items, I would have had no frustration there. But as it stands, that's just not a reality, and I just don't think it's very nice. I think it's one of those areas where it's aged the game immensely, because I don't think this game has aged at all. I think it feels just as good now as it always felt, if not more so, because at the moment in time we don't really have too many games that are coming out and blowing our minds. So when you come back to a game that was this good in 2011, which is 7 years ago, and it still holds up so well, you realise just how good this game was. That right there, I believe, is a cinematic spawn. There are times where the game populates an enemy behind you to try and make you jump, and they're the ones that creep up on you really slowly, and then you turn around and shit your pants and everything. So just be aware to turn around. But if you're playing on console and you have high sensitivity, you can turn pretty quickly, but you cannot turn the way I'm turning in this game. This requires a mouse, unfortunately, guys. And if you're playing the base version of the game, you can't really do it then because the mouse is so terrible. And if you're wondering how I've managed to fix it, it involves downloading a patch. Somebody's created a mod that makes the mouse work and disables the acceleration. And then if you go into the game files, the config file, you can change the aim sensitivity so both your hip aiming and your aim down sights are the same level. But speaking of terrible aiming, this is another sequence where my aim is affected and there's nothing I can do. So if you wonder why I don't do this convincingly and effectively, it's because it's like aiming in toffee. It's the worst feeling in the world. But the spawn is one crawler, one of the exploders, that guy runs at you, then there's two guys from your left, and then there's another exploder coming, and then there's one guy from your left. But look at my aim right now. When have you seen my aim be like this? Not once, right? My aim has been consistent, concise, and effective this entire run. But just then, I looked like I'd handed it off to my dog, and he was using his paws to aim. And that's how bad it is. And there's nothing you can do. It's just horrendous. I was so fearful of these sections when I was doing this run that I was tempted to plug the controller in. Because on the controller that section wouldn't be bad at all, because I never realised much of a difference when I first played. But on mouse, it feels like garbage. But thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying the run, and you take care now.